give you some background to why you're going to get the kind of rooms you're going to get in your new facility, and lay out what those rooms will be. And Josh is going to chime in whenever he thinks he needs to let you know more about some of those technologies that you'll have. Really, a few years ago, there was a new movement to create rooms based on what we call active learning. And that's basically just learning where instead of students are passively given, where they just receive information through lecture for the whole period of instruction, they actually have more hands-on experience with material. And so a few years ago, the North Carolina State University, a professor there named Bob Buechner, he sort of designed this space himself, and it's taken off. MIT was quick to pick it up. There are at least 150 different institutions across the United States who have sort of redesigned their programs, not just science programs or STEM programs, but business, even humanities classes. And you'll notice that in this kind of room, there are round tables with 9 chairs at each table. And the idea is that each table can host 3 different teams. So there are 3 sets of 3 students. And this sort of changes the way instruction happens. You can imagine that it would create differences when you have a room like this, students sitting together like this. They'll be doing a little bit different things inside of class, but also outside of class. So the basic idea is that in class, students have some kind of interesting task that they work on during the hour, during the period. And I think the key word there really is interesting. It's not just about the same kinds of problems that students would be doing from a textbook, but it's really something that the instructor has created that will spark interest in students and that they can work together to sort of discover, create knowledge. This model that Bob Buechner designed is called Scale Up, and that's sort of the originator, and it stands for Student-Centered Active Learning Environments with Upside-Down Pedagogies. And you'll see, here's a picture of the MIT adaptation. It's very similar. We have screens, projectors, there are whiteboards around the room. Again, these pods, these are circle-shaped, but the pods could be rectangular. And the teal model is technology-enhanced active learning. So it's the same basic idea that not only do you have groups or pods, but you're also adding in interesting technologies that can help facilitate the work students do. So instead of being lectured to the whole class, there might be a mini lecture, and then students might be required to use the web to look up information on their own and put it together according to interesting guidelines that the instructor has created for them. So this has been taking off in the last few years, and really your classrooms are going to be able, almost all of your classrooms will be able to facilitate this kind of model of learning and instruction, with the exception of your large classrooms. But I would say the interesting thing about your classrooms that you're going to have is that you really have even more of a variety of learning strategies that you can use in those new classrooms. You wouldn't be limited, I'm trying to say, to just the circle tables. So do y'all have any questions before I move on about where this idea came from to create classrooms that promote active learning?
Can you go back one slide? I noticed it doesn't look like the computers on the tables are the kids' laptop computers. Those are computers that look like they stay there.
That's a great thing to notice. They are, and that won't be the case in your classrooms. And it's also, incidentally, not the case in most scale-up rooms. They really do rely on students to bring their own computers, their laptops, their iPads, that sort of thing. But that's a good thing to notice. Okay, so your classrooms, you'll have 4 different kinds of classrooms. You'll have large classrooms, you'll have medium and small flexible classrooms, and you'll have medium cluster classrooms. And I'll talk about what all of these have. But you're also going to have breakout study spaces. And this is something that Dean Maness was interested in having faculty think about, because there are all kinds of possibilities that you can do with your lessons that could make use of these kinds of study spaces and really change the way students go about studying or working together in groups.
And we have handouts kind of explain these different rooms, and you're just
Yeah, we
gonna
do.
show us these on the screen as well.
That's great. And Josh, this is a point where you might want to come in. You probably are better versed at this point than I am. As I understand it, this is still not set in stone, what all of these rooms will be like and the technologies they'll have, right?
We've got the gist of it right now. There are discussions going, I mean, we're evaluating the bid packages. And so there are certain installers, there are certain suppliers that we're trying to figure out money-wise where they're gonna land.
Okay.
We kind of have a wish list, and we think that there's like 75–80% are kind of guaranteed.
That's great.
But there's a lot of options that it's going to depend on the money side, and we're evaluating those bids now.
Okay. So in general, the things that I understand that will probably be there as far as technologies go, there will be multiple displays.
Correct.
And Josh was just telling me before we began that there'll also be a competence monitor in most rooms, like this one on the back wall, where you can see what everybody's seeing behind you, make sure you're all on the same page.
This is not as much a second monitor as it is for the professor to be able to see what's going on and not having to constantly turn around and look around. Although in these flexible spaces, if I was in this group, I could use that as a monitor. That's why it's a competence monitor for you, not as much as a second display.
And there'll be a dedicated computer in every room. So one computer that's here, a document camera, laptop connectivity, wireless throughout, removable whiteboards on rail systems. So if you're familiar with Cashion 300, it will be something like that, where they can pull off the whiteboards, work in groups.
And next Friday's workshop will feature those whiteboards. Patsy Norman's going to do a demonstration of those.
And then also screen sharing, particularly in the flexible classrooms, maybe also in the cluster classrooms, where an instructor using some kind of software could be walking amongst the groups, see something on one group's computer and say, this is something we need to talk about, and from that spot have it displayed on the screen so everybody can begin talking. I just think that's amazing. I think that's going to be so great. Yes?
Will there be the ability to have multiple things displayed simultaneously?
Yes, there will be, which allows for all kinds of interesting possibilities. That's a good question.
Do you mean from the professor's perspective, or from the class, the student's perspective?
Well, I guess it would.
Most of the rooms are going to have matrix switching, which is going to allow both a PC and a doc cam, or a PC and a laptop, so you can show them multiple ways. On the screen sharing flexible, like we're looking at that, we're looking at both hardware and software options that would allow almost anybody in the class to be able to have like content on phones or laptops and be able to send it to you as a professor, and then you would be able, literally to decide what goes up there.
Okay, but what I meant was like the Financial Market Center, where we can have 3 different things up simultaneously.
Yes, most of the rooms that have multiple displays will have that type of matrix switching where you'd be able to do the content that way.
So you mean a different thing on a different screen?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
have
like
2
three
screens, one with something here,
Right.
and one with something here.
Yeah,
You
like
can
the
compare
document
them.
camera here, your PowerPoint there, and then something from your student.
I don't know that it's going to have 3 or 4 matrix. I think it's going to be mirrored or one or the other. I don't know. I don't think you're going to have 3 options.
Okay.
But 2.
But yeah, doc cam on one, laptop on one, or PC.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the large classrooms will be able to house or seat 60 to 80 students. I think in all of these classrooms, they can actually have more students than this, but they're targeting this smaller number. So 60 to 80 students. So there'll be 7 in the new facility. 2 of them will be a deep horseshoe shape. So if you see your handout, your first handout, I think it is, this is different activities that you can use that are active learning activities in a large classroom. You can see a picture of the deep horseshoe. And then 5 traditional classrooms, but they'll have a little bit more curvature than we think of the traditional classroom. The large classrooms will also have sliding whiteboards at the front of the room. So then you'll also have flexible classrooms. And this just means basically there will be furniture that moves, tables and chairs, so that you can create any kind of arrangement that you can imagine in that particular classroom. And you can do that not just from class to class, but also within one class setting, so that you could do different activities in the same day. There'll be 9 medium-sized flexible classrooms that can seat 40 students, and 9 small that can seat 24. And I believe the small classrooms will also host the graduate classes. So they will be the seminar rooms. And so this configuration is called an X configuration. There'll be screen sharing, and as I said, movable tables and chairs. And then finally, yes.
I have a question.
Sorry.
I teach MBA students, but I don't use the MBA classrooms because I teach a lot of presentations. The students do a lot of presentations, and that's what they're being trained to do. So this kind of a room doesn't work at all for me because there is no front of the room. When presentations are made, they're
Yeah.
usually made so most people can look at them, even
Yes.
whether it's a banquet or wherever it is.
Yeah.
So people in the front often have to turn their chairs around with their back to the rest of the people at round tables, but how are the classrooms going to be determined in terms of which classroom you get to use if the one that the category that you're placed in, like MBA, doesn't work for you? Because right now I use the MIS 303 cash.
Well, before I answer your question directly, I will say that even these kinds of rooms can be reconfigured so that there is a front of the room. So you can rearrange the tables to be in rows if that's what would work best, or more like the
What you
traditional
want
room.
is the curved room like you just showed us, except I don't need to have 80 people
Yeah. What was the first thing of what you just said? I heard the curved room.
in
But
it. The room that you described, I
The
don't need the
large-
large room for
Mhm.
size, but if there's a curved room, are there any curvatures in a small room, or are they only in the large ones?
They're only these fixed kind of seatings in these large rooms. Yeah. So
So the
as to answer your
the
question.
medium one like this,
Yeah, there's not going to be a medium one like that. But I think that they're toying with ways that you can request types of rooms.
Right.
But what you're saying is that you don't want to be in a large room, but you do want that fixed kind of
Right.
seating.
the classes that have 60 people in need those rooms for 60, so I don't,
So you wouldn't.
I
be
wouldn't
able
get those rooms,
Yeah.
even if I requested them.
Yeah.
But I do want to have the ability to, I mean, most rooms, even podiums, the way they're set up, they're not set up for presenting. They're so that they're in front of you, they're in your way, they're on the wrong side of the screen, so that you're supposed to present from the left and the podium's on the right. I mean, nobody talks to presentation people before they design these things. So having flexibility is great, then you can make the room work for you, maybe. See, that's what I'm looking at to see, especially in the MBA program, our students they will tell you hundreds of presentations by the time they're done, and a lot of them are team presentations.
Yeah.
In fact, most of them are. So you have to have the space at the front of the room. So I'm just asking now while things are still being in flux.
Yeah, that may be something to bring up with Anthony. I mean, I think he'd be interested to hear that.
And also your chair and maybe Dean Manus, just to confer with both your chair and Dean Manus about your needs. Certainly Dean Manus wanted to expose you guys early enough so that in the spring, before you make those requests for what room you want in the new building, you'll kind of have an idea of what's going to work for you and what won't at all. That's the goal.
Rooms are to be assigned by the technology need. There's no such thing as an accounting room or an economics room where the infrastructure works right now. And the rooms are designed where, while some rooms may be kind of identical, but there are certain facets that you need that day, it's actually, there are plans and designs where classes could actually swap rooms for that particular time period for that day for technology that they needed if it didn't exist in the room that you needed.
Right, but technology is not the only game changer. It's also
Absolutely.
just physical layout of the room.
But again, this room could be configured, it's completely flexible. That room could be designed to have 4 rows and a front of room. You could make that room have a front of room. That's why it's completely flexible.
Yeah, I don't want to chase too many rabbits, but I envisioned walking into a room and I wanted it one way and the person before me left it a
Yes.
completely different way. Am I moving furniture before every class meeting?
Dean Manus is concerned about that too.
Yeah.
I'm doing that already in 303. I'm moving
Yeah.
the table out of the way, the podium out of the way, I'm putting the arms
Right.
down just to make the room work. I'm doing that every single.
I think you can get your students trained on how the room should
I
look.
do that.
And just,
Put it back a certain way.
when you come in, all those big guys, move the tables around.
Yeah.
Get them set up this way.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think Dean Manus plans to have a diagram on the wall with instruct back, please put the furniture back this way.
So
So there'll be a standard.
Default
Exactly.
position.
Exactly right,
That's-
and
that's
you just
helpful.
recruit students to put it in whatever configuration you want, and then
They're gonna ask if they get extra credit.
Tell them they want to
Always
do
ask.
Well, I have to check
With
with
the
the best
negative
class,
one.
because they're in 303 after me, to see, do they want to have the projector on, do they want, how can I help them for the class after me? So, I mean, professors can work with each other if we know who each other are.
Exactly.
Most students in one room would be helpful.
So these are the cluster classrooms, and this classroom is an example of cluster classrooms. So cluster classrooms have tables where you can turn the chairs back and work at the other tables behind you and work in clusters. That's the difference with cluster classrooms. I believe, Dr. North, you're going to be so disappointed, but I think that they're boat-shaped tables, but they're going to be bigger. So I think that they were careful to think about. Yeah, they're careful to think about that problem. I think they had that particular problem in mind. So they'll be bigger than what's here, and they'll be boat-shaped. And then the breakout study spaces, there'll be 36, so that's quite a good number. Open day and night, and their plan is to have some kind of reservation system that students can use to reserve those. One of the things you might be thinking about is how to make your students know about these breakout rooms. So research shows it's a good idea to put a clause in your syllabus if you're planning on using them. Research also tells us, you also might want to have orientation. So if you have a departmental orientation, that's a good time to show students these rooms. Welcome week, orientation.
Need it more than once, like the very first semester, and after that, we're good. I mean, I don't think this is something that would need to be done over and over again.
Yeah, probably not. And in fact, this is more broad with active learning classrooms in general and includes these study spaces, but research shows that freshmen and sophomores are much more open-minded to using these kinds of spaces than their upper level counterparts. And also, interestingly, students from metropolitan areas as opposed to students from rural areas. They seem to adapt better. But we also know that students establish study routines very early on.
And they don't
so,
change, they don't deviate from those
right.
patterns.
even if it's not working, what they're doing, they don't change. So you might want to encourage them to use these rooms. And I just think it would be an extension of what you can do in the classroom to use these rooms. I mean, you could even have students use those rooms during your class meeting for some reason. There are all kinds of benefits of technology-enhanced active learning classrooms. We've pulled together some research, but in general, students who are expected to perform at a certain level based on their ACT scores usually perform much higher than they would be expected to in these active learning rooms. There's more interaction. Students love it. In one study that I read, 85% of students said they would recommend that all their classes meet in active learning classrooms. And professors tend to love it too. And they all said, they use the word special a lot. They think that there's something that happens that's just special in these kinds of rooms. And people point to the fact that the relationships that are created in these kinds of rooms with this kind of instruction are so much more profound than in just the traditional kind of classroom that we think of. So here's some more: greater development of higher level thinking skills, sense of accountability, students more likely to seek help, all different kinds of things that are happening that are associated with these rooms. So with that, I better go ahead and let Dr. North lead us in an interesting experiment